For 12 long years, from 1933 until 1945, Adolf Hitler was Lord and Master of Germany. The outcome was a world war, a genocide, and 50 million dead. As the war came to an end, the Nazis were rendered harmless. Not all of them, though. Thus began the tracking down of Nazis. Those who had managed to elude punishment, such as Lischka from the Paris Gestapo or Barbie from the Lyon Gestapo, were hunted down all over the world by exceptional characters, such as Wiesenthal, an Austrian survivor of the camps, a young German woman, Beate Klarsfeld, who would not accept oblivion, or her French husband, Serge Klarsfeld, another Jewish survivor. All of them acting alone with an unyielding, obstinate courage in a forgetful world, in spite of constant threats and murder attempts. They have been tracking down Nazi criminals for 60 years in the name of justice and memory. Such crimes must never be forgotten, nor go unpunished. The war is now over, the Third Reich is defeated. The Germans are forced to bury themselves, the dead, whether final victims of a lengthy massacre, exhausted camp prisoners, or deportees put to death by the last bullet of the last soldier of a mad army. The Allies occupied Germany and what is its very heart, Nuremberg's great stadium. They get rid at once of the Nazi symbol in it, the swastika. Here, the Nazis used to acclaim their Führer, their leader, Adolf Hitler. There were 7 million members of the National Socialist Party, that is, Nazis, executives and relays of a dictatorship based on racism, hatred of free thought, and disregard of human life. Germans had to read a book, Mein Kampf, My Fight, which was nothing but a jumble of curses against the Jews, whom Hitler called creatures. In a period of social despair, many Germans supported Hitler. They admired his victories and shared his extolling of German greatness. And then, they couldn't help but submit to him. In 1945, people in Germany can only think of surviving. Amidst Berlin's wreckage lives a little girl. Her name is Beate Künzel. She is 6 years old, like the war. Her parents are humble people. Like many other mothers, her own tries to find if her husband is still alive.
Kurt, il s'appelait Kurt. Il devait entrer en guerre sans enthousiasme parce qu'il n'était pas nazi, il n'était pas résistant non plus. Il était fait prisonnier par les Britanniques. Ils avaient tous en commun, c'était se plaindre que les Allemands avaient perdu la guerre, qu'on avait perdu les appartements. Donc c'était plutôt leur occupation des Allemands, c'est de dire « Oh là là, nous les pauvres Allemands ».
Germany in 1945 has become a huge trap for the Nazis. Dozens of military and police teams, American, British, French, and Soviet teams, comb the entire German society. Many Nazis have merged into the masses of German prisoners of war. Most Nazi soldiers and officers deem they have nothing to be blamed for. After all, they were mobilized and they fought for their land, though for Hitler too. Others are in hiding. The SS men, Hitler's personal guard, the death camps guards, the murderers at Oradour, and all those responsible for 1,000 other massacres. In order to flush out those SS, the Allies sort out one by one their prisoners by having them raise their arms, since the SS wear a special tattoo under one arm which shows their blood group, an indelible membership sign, though useful when wounded. The British capture the chief of the SS, Heinrich Himmler. Himmler was the Lord of Death. We see him here as he visits one of his concentration camps near Minsk. He holds his nose. His victims do smell bad. This British document shows Himmler dead, a strange sight. After having been searched, he would have swallowed a cyanide vial concealed in his mouth. A questionable fact. Was Himmler helped to do it in order to silence him? He had several times been negotiating with the British. Hermann Göring, Marshal of the Reich and number 2 leader of the regime, is captured in full regalia as he imagines he'll be able to deal with the Allies. He holds an actual press conference in front of 10 cameras, one of which is a color camera. America's public opinion will be appalled by such a considerate treatment of a Nazi war criminal. As a result, the other high Nazi leaders will be treated with a greater aloofness. For example, Speer, Minister for Armament, arrested at the same time as General Jodl, Supreme Chief of Staff, and Grand Admiral Karl Dönitz, successor to Hitler. They still ignore how the Allies will deal with them. The British arrest the ministers of the very last German government, appointed after Hitler's suicide. Among them, they suddenly discover a suspicious face. It is not Hitler, but doubts about his actual suicide linger for a long time. Yet in Berlin, in what is then the Soviet zone, and in the ruins of the Chancery of the Reich, the Russians claim they have discovered Hitler's bones, half buried near the Führer's bunker. For the whole world, Hitler is the guilty one, the accountable one. He has had the strength of conveying an energy, a willpower, a fierceness to the worst elements of his people, with the complicity of other criminals, of whom the first and foremost was Joseph Goebbels, the inventor of state propaganda.
Am 13. Januar wird sich das deutsche Saarvolk einmütig zum Reich und zur Staatsidee Adolf Hitlers bekennen.
To avoid being captured, Goebbels committed suicide. The Allies discover daily new horrors, and the whole extent of the Holocaust, the Shoah, the murder of 6 million Jews. They will show it all to the German people. In the Bergen-Belsen camp, which has just been liberated, the dead lie next to the living. A deported physician wrote, protein shortage created edemas, the lack of iron ulcerated the gums and led to walking disorders. The inadequate daily rations led to an extreme loss of weight and to a constant diarrhea. The camp's hygiene was deliberately ghastly. The straw mattresses soaked in the dying's dejecta were littered with dried spit. TB, dysentery, and scarlet fever victims shared them with the wounded. Most SS guards, as here in Bergen-Belsen, will be captured. And so will be Josef Kramer, commander of the camp. The SS women guards, as inhuman as the men were, are sitting on the heaps of corpses awaiting their fate. It will be a pitiless one for Maria Mendel, the Auschwitz beast, for her savage friend, Elisabeth Ruppert, and for Ilse Koch, the Buchenwald bitch. Regrettably well known for her collection of tattoos removed from the skin of camp prisoners. For her lampshades made out of human skin. For her anatomical sections, some of which, later sent to universities, will be made use of by German medical students for a long time. Or for her paperweights, the best known of which, the shrunk head of a Russian officer, will be one of the exhibits at the Nuremberg trial. Before being jailed, the SS bury their victims, helped by Kapos, who usually are common law prisoners owing their lives to their brutal slavishness. As the camps were liberated, many Kapos were lynched on the spot at the time by the most able-bodied prisoners. Other prisoners helped identify them and have them all arrested. Among those prisoners, we see an Austrian Jew, Simon Wiesenthal. His family has been murdered. He has survived by a miracle. Or rather, because he had pledged he would survive after an SS told him in 1943, "You, the Jew, if you survive and reach New York, will you tell about it?" Wiesenthal had answered, "I will tell it all," and the SS jeered at him, "No one will believe you." Another miracle. Wiesenthal finds his wife, sent to a camp too, alive. Back home in Linz, Austria, he decides he'll devote his life to the running to earth of all Nazi criminals. Every case requires its own inquiry. Are the Nazis all criminals? And are all the criminals Nazis? Wiesenthal seeks justice, not vengeance.
Nous autres qui étions dans les camps de concentration, nous autres juifs, qui sommes encore en vie, nous avions perdu notre foi en la justice. Alors, lorsque ces gens sont arrêtés, condamnés et exécutés, cela nous donne l'impression que la justice existe ou peut exister et qu'il s'agit de la retrouver. Car si nous ne croyons plus à la justice, à quoi bon continuer à vivre?
But in 1945, in all liberated countries, the feeling for vengeance was overriding people's minds. Those who had collaborated with the Germans must pay, at once. In France, at Vichy, a chief of the milice who fought the resistance is lynched by the mob. In Paris, two French policemen who had been working as torturers for the Gestapo, bony, and Lafont are executed. In Prague, Jarosz, who helped Hitler carve up his country, is shot too. In Rome takes place a ceremony of shame as Caruso, head of the fascist police, is shot in the back. The Allies are divided. Churchill would have them all shot. But Roosevelt says, it will be more fair and efficient to start an official trial, providing future generations an exhaustive case file on Nazi crimes. It will be the first international trial in history. Nuremberg's law courts are chosen, as they remain one of the few such buildings still intact. Nuremberg, where Göring had proclaimed the racial laws.
Eheschließungen zwischen Juden und Staatsangehörigen deutschen oder artverwandten Blutes sind verboten.
Göring is now a mere prisoner, as all the other dignitaries of the Reich. During 3 months, German war prisoners renovate the courtroom. They are former SS who, until then, kept camp prisoners working. The Americans have a projection room installed by them. The media from all over the world will be there for the war criminals' trial. The trial will last a whole year, until October 1946. The 22 top Nazi leaders still alive will be tried. Göring has lost a lot of weight. Addicted to drugs, he has had to undergo a treatment in jail. Here is proud Admiral Dönitz, now worn out and grown old, followed by Rudolf Hess, who slightly nods disdainfully. Hess, the Führer's heir apparent, had flown over to England in 1941 to negotiate peace. Unsuccessfully, he has spent the war in jail. A mocking Göring welcomes the man he has always called a fool, Ribbentrop, Hitler's Minister for Foreign Affairs, followed by Baldur von Schirach, head of Hitler's youth movement. An unlikely social gathering, while they risk a death sentence. Like Marshal Keitel, who clicks his heels, he is indicted for crimes of war, together with General Jodl, his deputy. They have covered up for the summary executions of Soviet commissioners and shielded all kinds of horrors carried out on the Eastern Front. A German soldier has filmed here a Russian child being torn from his mother and then murdered. In front of these hanged men, a notice says, "These Jews have insulted the Wehrmacht." Jews should have shown respect for German soldiers. Here is Alfred Rosenberg, hazy theorist of anti-Semitism who brought to a frenzy the myth of the superior race. He spread all over Germany the poison of his theories, relayed by newspapers like The Stürmer, with its Jewishness is criminal. Its editor, Streicher, who is sitting in the front row of the defendant's bench, was already advocating in 1935 the final solution.
Geworden ist, der weiß, ohne Lösung der Judenfrage
keine Erlösung der Menschheit.
Notions that brought about massacres. No lesser was Franz von Pappen's responsibility. He was Germany's chancellor before Hitler and helped him rise to power. But who could have foreseen it? These Nazis, so anti-communistic, so reassuring when out of uniform, have rather extreme ideas, but the run of affairs might temper them. It did not. Within months, good old fat Göring has turned into a tyrant and started the first concentration camp at Dachau, near Munich, to lock up at first the communists, the Social Democrats, and the trade unionists. Annexes will have to be created at Buchenwald and Mauthausen. The criminals will appear in front of British, American, Soviet, and French judges. The entire trial will be filmed under heavy spotlights that make the accused uncomfortable. Kaltenbrunner, chief of the Gestapo, has to be taken to a military hospital. He was the one who had Hans and Sophie Scholl, courageous young German resistance fighters, beheaded in front of him. Rudolf Hess can take it no longer, though he might be feigning madness. Such are these men, publicly perceived here as the living symbols of evil. Every country victimized by the Nazis is represented here by its own prosecutors. All languages are translated simultaneously, thanks to a system devised by the American firm IBM. The charges against them are a plot against peace, crimes of war, and crimes against humanity. For the first time, a definition of crimes against humanity is given in international law. It includes assassination, slavery, racial persecutions, and any inhuman act against civilian populations. For the first time, too, the main trial exhibit shown is a film, introduced by a warning signed by the great filmmaker John Ford. In order to prevent any negationist claim, he attests to the fact that no film effects whatever have been added to the images. The film starts with an upsetting map of hundreds of Nazi camps. For most defendants, it's a real shock. They didn't all know or want to know. In the end, one of the most compromised might be Speer. In his arms factories, camp prisoners died massively. Sauckel was also providing the slaves working for the mandatory work services. They were in concentration camps too. People often died there, starving to death, dying of exposure from ill treatments or exhaustion. But other camps were death camps, meant to kill en masse healthy people, millions of men, women, and children, by means of a deadly gas, Zyklon B, spread in gas chambers. In their crematorium furnaces, they could burn daily thousands of corpses. A French Auschwitz survivor is here to testify. A communist she was deported for acts of resistance.
Êtes-vous témoin direct
Oui.
de la sélection à l'arrivée des convois?
Oui, parce que quand nous avons travaillé au bloc de la couture en 1944, notre bloc, le bloc où nous habitions, était en face de l'arrivée du train. On avait perfectionné le système. Au lieu de faire la sélection à la halte d'arrivée, une voie de garage menait le train presque jusqu'à la chambre à gaz. Et l'arrêt, c'est-à-dire à 100 mètres de la chambre à gaz, était juste devant notre bloc, mais naturellement séparé par 2 rangées de fils de fer barbelés. Nous voyions donc les wagons déplombés, les soldats sortir, les hommes, les femmes et les enfants des wagons, et on assistait aux scènes déchirantes des vieux couples se séparant, des mères étant obligées d'abandonner leurs jeunes filles puisqu'elles entraient dans le camp, tandis que les mères et les enfants étaient dirigés vers la chambre à gaz. Tous ces gens-là ignoraient le sort qui leur était réservé. Ils étaient seulement désemparés parce qu'on les séparait les uns des autres, mais ils ignoraient qu'ils allaient à la mort. Par les...
You're going too fast.
Sorry. Une nuit, nous avons été réveillés par des cris effroyables. Nous avons appris le lendemain matin par les hommes qui travaillaient au Sonderkommando, le commando des gaz, que la veille, n'ayant pas assez de gaz, ils avaient jeté les enfants vivants dans les fournaises.
What can the defendants say? Here are some of the final statements. Göring.
Ich habe alles getan, ihn durch Verhandlungen zu vermeiden.
Ribbentrop.
Was wir beabsichtigten, war, unsere elementarsten Daseinsbedingungen wahrzunehmen für die
Kaltenbrunner.
Konzentrationslager, für die Vernichtung jüdischen Menschenlebens, für Einsatzgruppen und anderes mehr. Dies alles entspricht weder dem Beweisergebnis noch der Wahrheit.
Rudolf Hess specially asks to remain seated due to his poor health.
Ich bin kein kirchlicher Mensch. Ich habe kein inneres Verhältnis zu den Kirchen. Aber ich bin ein tief religiöser Mensch. Ich bin überzeugt, dass mein Gottglaube stärker ist als der meisten anderen Menschen.
Only Keitel, as a soldier, has dignity.
Es liegt mir fern, meinen Anteil an dem, was geschehen ist, zu verkleinern. Ich habe geirrt und war nicht imstande zu verhindern, was hätte verhindert werden müssen. Das ist meine Schuld.
It will not save him. The court retires to confer. But will these men be equal to this historical moment? The judges argue in order to save some heads, such as that of Speer, who helped the Allies by handing them the plans of Japan's military industry, or that of Von Papen, who has good friends. The Soviet judges are reluctant. Most defendants are sentenced to death. Among them Göring, Kaltenbrunner, Rosenberg, Sauckel, Streicher, Ribbentrop. Göring manages to commit suicide, though he has been constantly kept under surveillance. Who handed in the cyanide? Why did his guard relax his watch? Was it sympathy or bribery? The executions are carried out at once during the night of October the 15th to the 16th, 1946. After the top leaders comes the turn of those who obeyed them with the greatest zeal. The Western Allies alone will judge and hang 794 Nazi criminals, among them Kramer, commander of the Bergen-Belsen camp. Another camp commander is about to be hanged, Amon Goeth, the actual camp chief in the film Schindler's List. He loved shooting camp prisoners with a rifle. His end will be a long one. The hangman has poorly reckoned his gallows. The hangman gets worked up. Goeth survives 2 hangings and dies the 3rd time. The hangman is at last satisfied. In Eastern Europe, there will be hundreds of executions, always in public, and always filmed with the most ghastly details. Such are the punishments inflicted by those nations who have suffered. At Landsberg jail in Bavaria, the Americans hang medical doctors. At Dachau, Dr. Klaus Schilling had been during 2 years inoculating malaria to his prisoners in order to try out new treatments. His reasoning was, since these people must die, let them be of some use. Thus, many German physicians rushed forward to benefit from a unique good luck given by the Nazis to supply very many human guinea pigs of all ages and origins. Auschwitz's German physician, Dr. Josef Mengele, wrote in 1943 to his medical instructor, "How wonderful! This is the first time I see a human stomach while it works." He carried out genetic experiments on twins to prove Hitler's racial theories. But Mengele managed to slip through the net. How many Nazi criminals vanished into the millions of refugees who were still roaming all over Germany? Some of them even stayed in Germany itself, sometimes under their very own names such as those of Hagen, Lischka, Heinrichson, though they were wanted in France for their crimes. They were not aware of being criminals. They'd done their duty. Why should they be harried? But Mengele has no choice. His name has come up at the doctor's trial in Nuremberg. He has been sentenced in his absence, and he knows he is wanted. He will get away with it, mainly because he is one of the few SS who has not been tattooed. He has the means and connections that allow him, as others too, to borrow the celebrated Rat's Road. A network organized a long time before by the Nazis, a way out through the Alps, leading to Italy, and to the Middle East, hostile to Jews, where the Gestapo's Brunner will eventually hide, to Franco's Spain, and to South America, where their hunters will later be able to flush them out. Argentina. Its dictator Juan Perón and his wife Evita are notoriously favorable to the Nazis. Argentina's army has been equipped and trained by the Wehrmacht. A powerful German colony has always hailed Hitler there, and German banking institutions are available to accommodate the SS's horde. The Allies have recovered a small part of it when they've liberated the camps. When arrested, deportees were ordered to take their valuables with them. It would help them in their new life, they were told. The SS would thus recover the silver, the wedding rings, the gold teeth, then melt it all down and send the ingots to Switzerland, where Evita Perón had discreetly gone after the war. Gold then changes hands. 300 Nazi runaways will enter Argentina with forged papers, but with authentic Red Cross travel documents and some help from certain offices in the Vatican, not very mindful or even conniving ones, but run over by a real flood of refugees. Thus flees to Argentina the SS Adolf Eichmann. Eichmann, organizing mind of the final solution, planner of Nazi crimes, master switchman of the death trains. His convoys of deportees from all over Europe run to the death camps. Right-of-way trains that keep running until the downfall of the Reich and Hitler's last breath. Eichmann is back every night in Wiesenthal's nightmares. "I keep thinking of him," says Wiesenthal. "To me, he has now become the #1 criminal. But where is he hiding? Is he even alive yet?" Wiesenthal has created a net of surviving victims who write to him from all over the world, but he also gets denunciations of Nazis by other Nazis. Thus he gets hold of an exceptional document, the official register ledger of the SS.
I paid for this book $500 for a formerly Gestapo chief. Yes. Formerly Nazi, he was only a simple party member. He was in a little town or a village. After the war, he saw he was in a big murder party, and now he knows many big party members have too much money, has good cars, and has factories. And he's a little man. He came to me, and so, I will, for my conscience, tell you what I know.
Wiesenthal has thus rediscovered Adolf Eichmann's trail. He now calls himself Ricardo Clement. Wiesenthal knows he is alive, but where? Eichmann first hid in a farm in Argentina's Pampas. The great murderer bred there rabbits, then held various small jobs. Nothing to be proud of, but at least he thought he was safe. As other former Nazis did, who thought safety was to be found at the world's end. A world's end for them such as Bariloche, a small town in the Andes. There, those runaways have had cottages built in the Bavarian style, while still dreaming of a revival of Nazism. Far from them now, Germany is slowly being rebuilt with all those Trümmerfrauen, women of the ruins, exhausting themselves to help do so. But the Germans also need to recover their own memory. The very few who try have a hard time of it. Wiesenthal feels isolated. He guesses that it will take another generation to face such a past. The children of Germany's 0 year are growing up with their parents' silence, as does Beate.
Des parents qui faisaient partie de la majorité silencieux, qui ont voté pour Hitler. Mes parents n'étaient pas des résistants, c'était pas des nazis non, pas des nazis non plus, mais c'était leur, en principe c'était ces familles qui racontaient rien aux enfants. On ne se posait pas de questions. J'ai vécu à Berlin, une ville quand même qui était frontalière avec une autre partie d'un monde, le monde communiste, et nous on a vécu dans le secteur occidental, disons des Anglais. Et donc j'ai vu une ville divisée et puis les forces d'occupation, ça m'a certainement formée.
Yet Beate has constantly in sight the prison of Spandau, where the war criminals not hanged at Nuremberg are jailed. The people of Berlin come and watch the changing of the guards of the four occupying powers. British or American military police, French men-at-arms are everywhere. The Soviet soldiers are locked up in their lookouts by their officers to prevent them from fleeing to the west. Spandau Prison is a huge medieval-like jail building whose upkeep costs are outrageous for only 7 prisoners. Among them, Rudolf Hess, Hitler's heir apparent, who will cover his cell's walls with photographs of the moon. Albert Speer, minister and close friend of Hitler's, has been sentenced to 20 years in jail. On the other side of these walls, in the Soviet zone, a great amount of placards denounce the absence of von Papen at Spandau. How can this man, who favored Hitler's political takeover, have been acquitted at Nuremberg? These demonstrations, organized by the Soviets, will lead to the opening of another trial in the rival zone of Germany. Von Papen is arrested again and tried by a West German court. Within a wide movement of denazification, he is sentenced to 8 years of hard labor. Millions of Nazis, or Nazi sympathizers, are then harassed. 100,000 are sentenced. But an awareness of the past is still hard to be awakened. Such trials will become fewer. People in Germany want to forget Nazism and turn the page. Even those who were tattooed as they entered Auschwitz.